First of all, thank you very much for another welcome here. This has turned out to be an extraordinary combined meeting of APAN and APRICOT. And I've been very impressed by the quality of the sessions that I've been able to attend and by the people that I have met, some old friends and some new ones. One thing I'm sort of standing up here thinking, why does anybody care what this old guy in a three-piece suit has to say about IPv6? Particularly given the history. Bob Kahn and I chose 32 bits of address space at the time that we wrote the first paper describing what the internet would look like. It was almost an arbitrary choice. The host identifiers in the ARPANET were 24 bits long, so we knew we needed more than 24 bits because we had to identify networks. And at the time we were doing this, we thought, well, maybe there would be a couple of networks per country because they would be, big national scale nets. So we thought 256 networks would be enough, for this kind of a system. So we picked 32 bits as the address space. Then later, as the actual implementations of internet began in 1975 and proceeded into 76, several things became very apparent. One of them is that there might be more than 256 networks. And second, that there was a need to split the internet protocol out from TCP. So in this time period around 1977 or so, there was a one-year-long debate after this plan to split the IP address or IP packet format out from TCP. The question was how much address space should be assigned to the internet protocol. Some people wanted variable length addresses, and they were shouted down because everybody thought it would take too much computer power to find the fields of the packets. Remember, this is 1977 when computers were expensive. Some people thought 128 bits would be appropriate because they thought correctly that there would be a large number of local networks. Ethernet by this time was about 4 years old. But 128 bits of address space is, as you know, 340 trillion addresses. And when I was running the program in the Defense Department, I didn't think I could stand up and, with a straight face, say that this experiment needed 340 times 10 to the 36 addresses in order to carry out the work. So after no one came to any convergence on the debate between these three alternatives, and so I thought, well, we're not making any progress, we're just arguing over address space. Let's just stick with the 32 bits and get on with the experiment. So here it is, 2011, and we realize that the experiment is coming to an end, and we have to implement the production address space, which is IPv6. I was going to suggest that if you're counting how long it will be before we really run out of v4 addresses, when an ISP asks and gets the answer, no, I'm sorry, we don't have any left, we should probably plan to hire a fat lady who will sing on that day, because the expression that it isn't over till the fat lady sings. The term transition is being used in this discussion, and I would like to suggest that this is going to be such a lengthy period of time when version 4 and version 6 addresses are in use that we should really be thinking about simply parallel operation. So the notion that this transition is something that will happen in a quick way, I think, is unlikely, partly because v4 addresses will still work. It's just that we won't have enough of them for everyone. The other thing I wanted to observe is that whatever I say this morning will be fairly lightweight compared to what you'll hear from the panelists, so I'm trying to be fairly brief. What I think is important here is to concentrate on getting the job done. Getting this job done is not deeply hard, but it is very meticulous. It has some relationship to the Y2K problem that some of you will recall and some of you probably lived through. In that particular case, there was a very well-defined threshold, December 31, 1999. If you didn't have 4 digits for the year, there could be confusion about whether whether 0 meant 1900 or 2000. There was also a fairly meticulous task, which was to go through all the software and find every place in the code that thought the year was represented with 2 digits and had to be replaced with 4. I recall hiring people who had long since retired to come back and go look at the code that they had written 40 years ago to find the places where those 2 digits had to be replaced with 4. Some of you may recognize the name Alan Greenspan. Alan was the head of the Federal Reserve in the United States for many years, and I remember having dinner with him in 1999 before the Y2K deadline occurred. And I learned over dinner that he was in fact a programmer as a young man, and he'd written software in the 1950s. So I said, well, Alan, why didn't you put 4 digits into the software back then and save us this trouble? And he said, well, first of all, memory was expensive, and saving 2 digits was actually significant. And second, he didn't think that any of his software was going to be running 50 years later. So it occurred to me that we also had made a mistake by insisting that we only increase the number of digits by a factor of 2 to 4 digits. Someone in the year 9,999 is going to be really angry that we didn't use 5 digits for... So there may come a day when somebody says 128 bits isn't enough. But that day is some ways off, I think. So this is just to remind you that the number of hosts that are visible in the public internet seems to be doubling about every 5 to 6 years, which is slower than before when it was doubling every year. However, an awful lot of machines are not visible on the public net. They're hiding behind firewalls, or they are episodically connected. So this is clearly just a lower bound, and the actual rate at which machines need address space is probably going up faster than this. It's just that it's very hard to get a concrete figure for that. The number of people on the net, as you know, is on the order of 2 billion, and the mobiles are somewhere in the 4.5 to 5 billion range. Here's where all the people are. A lot of you are here in Asia. And we all know that the primary allocation of IPv4 address space from the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority exhausted all of its available space. I thought it was February 4th, but Tony said February 3. Is it really? Doesn't matter, but I should correct it if I'm wrong. Oh, thank you. That's right, because of this one. Good point. Yes, we have this international date line problem. What a mess. Okay. All right. So the run out of the RIR address space is probably not simultaneous. Probably some RIRs will run out before others will, but it's almost certain that it will be during 2012. I'm looking at Jeff, and he's saying no. You think it will be before that? Oh, what do you mean?
July 2011.
July 2011? I see. Oh, for the first one to have run out? Thank you, Jeff. Do you have a big sign up that says the world is coming to an end? Make your peace, because, yes. Well, the Mayans are probably right. The world does come to an end in 2012 anyway, so. So thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that input. One thing which I think has been missing from the whole story of getting IPv6 running is that the internet service providers have seemed to me to have been very slow to implement IPv6. And the explanations that I have heard are things like, well, no one is asking for IP version 6. And I would suggest to you that most users should not even have to know that there is a v4 or a v6. It's hidden behind domain names. People don't type IP addresses anywhere. So the fact that users are not asking sounds like a pretty weak excuse to me. Another excuse is, well, we haven't run out yet. And I think this is very short-sighted, because if you're an ISP, one of your jobs is to make sure your customers can get to everyone who is on the internet. Even if you have a version 4 address, the other party might not, for the reasons that Jeff implied just moments ago. Some people will run out in July of 2011 and have to start assigning IPv6 addresses, those people won't be reachable unless the rest of the net has IPv6 capability. So neither of those excuses strikes me as being very valid, and it only motivates me to say that we should be asking, those of us who have service from internet service providers, we should all be asking, what is your IPv6 plan? I've done a number of interviews over the course of the last day or so, and one of the things I've asked the reporters is that they should ask the internet service providers, what is your IPv6 plan? And anything we can do to sort of expose either the lack of planning or expose what the plans are so that the rest of us can prepare seems to me a useful thing. Many of you will know that there is an IPv6, World IPv6 Day, which is now planned for the 8th of June, 2011. I think the original idea was June 6th because that would be 6/6, except I think that fell on a Sunday or something, and that seemed like it might not be a good operational time to try this out. I think that if you're part of the IPv6 implementation working group, task force, team, it will be very important for you to look at all the various situations in which a remote user might present themselves to you and your system. So that means not only someone that might be IPv6 only, but it means someone who is coming to you through a tunnel or coming to you through other kinds of means of translating, maybe through NAT boxes. Every one of those different cases, I think, needs to be considered. And once again, we're back to very meticulous, step-by-step evaluation of the various cases to make sure that you have covered all of them. I think some people are worried that because we don't have a lot of operational experience with IPv6, that there will be some risks, that there will be vulnerabilities that haven't been uncovered. That's probably true. But the argument that we should not proceed with IPv6 because it's immature is a circular argument, because if you don't do anything, it will stay immature. The only way that we will get IPv6 to become more mature is to implement it, discover the problems, and fix them.